Righteous Felon Craft Jerky is the official jerky of BellyUpSports. For over a decade, Righteous Felon Craft Jerky has led the American meat snack revolution by concocting delicious, adventurous, U.S.-sourced jerky recipes for uncompromising carnivores across the country. With 15 different flavors to choose from, Righteous Felon has all jerky lovers covered, and by using promo code BELLYUP, you will get 15% off your purchase at RighteousFelon.com. Do your taste buds a favor today and rip into a bag of Righteous Felon jerky.
Bayern Munich coming off of a down year. And I do that with air quotes. Obviously, if you guys are listening to the audio version, you probably didn't see me do the air quote. The reason why I say I do it like that is because everyone kept saying, "Oh, Bayern Munich's trash this year." Bayern Munich, I believe, either pass or match the same number of points that they had the year before, where they won the league. And I mentioned it on a previous episode with Jose. Like, it took a team to go undefeated to win to end the streak for Bayern Munich. And I'm not a Bayern Munich fan by any means. This isn't me trying to defend Bayern Munich, but I'm just saying, like, they didn't play badly. I mean, Bayer Leverkusen was just having a better year than Bayern Munich, and sometimes it just comes down to it. And I think, and I've said this before, and I mean, you know, Kelcey, I heard me say this plenty of times. When they lost Robert Lewandowski, they became beatable. Mm-hmm. They didn't feel like, oh, shoot, we got to go up against Bayern Munich. Like, it was never that anymore. Once Robert Lewandowski left, this team looked mortal to everyone else. Like, it wasn't just like, unless you're Hoffenheim, who just somehow ends up beating Bayern Munich on the occasion. I don't know why it's Hoffenheim, but it's always Hoffenheim. But
always
Hoffenheim. Shout out to Pellegrino. But like, did they not meet expectations? Oh, definitely. I mean, they definitely did not, you know, they didn't win the Bundesliga. They didn't win the DFB Pokal. They're one round away from the Champions League. But
technically half a round away from the Champions League final.
I mean, they didn't even win the German Super Cup. So it's you know, because that matters. But yeah, it was just a very unfortunate year for Bayern Munich. It's also hilarious because Harry Kane basically just made another meme of himself. And I pulled for Harry Kane. I'm not a hater on Harry Kane. I just hate Tottenham. But yeah, I think it took a lot of surprising things to happen in order for Bayern Munich not to win the Bundesliga, which is a good thing. And, you know, obviously it's good that, you know, Xabi Alonso's staying put with Bayer Leverkusen. I'm excited about Stuttgart next year. They had an amazing season. They finished in second and Bayern Munich finished in third. So, I mean, if you look at the table, then yes, they did not, they definitely fell off. But I mean, they still have, Bayern Munich still has the most money out of any team in the Bundesliga. So I don't think that they're necessarily in a bad situation as far as their finances goes. But I do have a concern with who they just hired as manager, and they hired Vincent Kompany to be the new manager of Bayern Munich. Now, there's a lot of things that come into play here, Kelcey. One, everyone they went after denied him. Ralf Rangnick said, "Nah, I'm good. I'm just gonna keep coaching Austria." Julian Nagelsmann was like, "Nah, I'm good. I'm just gonna keep coaching Germany." Who was the other name that they were going after? Xabi Alonso, obviously staying put with Bayer Leverkusen. Don't know what happened if they even approached Roberto De Zerbi. That name is still floating around. We'll see what happens with him. Maybe he takes the Juventus job. I'm just throwing out a club. I don't know if he's in the mix for that one. But I guess when you thought of the potential names that were left out, right? You know, Roberto De Zerbi was a name that people were hoping to see he'd get a job. They even tried to bring back Thomas Tuchel. That didn't pan out. I said it. I think that if any team should have been going after Hansi Flick, it should have been Bayern Munich. But now he's at Barcelona, and I mean, right now Barcelona can't even register him onto the club. So maybe that's your chance there, Bayern Munich. But no, it's too late now. They have committed to Vincent Kompany, which his more successful term was obviously when he initially got his job as a manager, which was with Anderlecht over in the Belgian league. which, mind you, Anderlecht is a powerhouse in Belgium.
Yes.
So take that with a grain of salt. Obviously, he got Burnley promoted the year before and then completely obliterated in the Premier League, which is expected for teams that normally get promoted up to, especially if you don't do the proper moves to make the right signings to stay afloat in the Premier League, which I don't think Burnley necessarily did. Talking to you, JJ Watt. But this is an interesting move, right? You go after Vincent Kompany. The man literally has 4 years of coaching experience, very little European competition experience, and you're basically telling the Bayern Munich fans that this is the guy that's going to get the bounce back for Bayern Munich.
Yeah, man. If it has been last year with Vincent Kompany, I'm a little more likely to be less pessimistic about it. I'll be honest. I think coming off a promotion opportunity with Burnley, you get him up to the Premier League, huge boon to your entire coaching repertoire. Like, your resume now looks fantastic. You got Burnley there after what you did in Anderlecht, which is, again, like you said, powerhouse. Guys like Lukaku have come out of there. You name it, they've put out some great players. American Sasha Kleshin won Champions League or won the league with them multiple times. Becomes the winningest American overseas, by the way. But yeah, now you just came off of a relegation battle, and now you're going to go to the biggest team in the last quarter century, not named Real Madrid. And you're going to be like, hey, I'm going to take over with 4 years of experience, and I just got a team relegated. That's not what Bayern Munich fans need to hear. That's not what Bayern Munich players need to hear. The difference here is Vincent Kompany is obviously still a player at heart. He was a great general on the field. There's no doubt about it. Big part of the reason why Man City had to turn around in defensive abilities. Obviously, the money helped, but that's what the part that I think this is going to help him out is he changes completely from the Burnley strapped for cash situation to now there's rumors he's going to try to break Barcelona's transfer record in this offseason. Already. They've already targeted Danny Olmo to come back to the German league and now see what he can do with Bayern Munich. Who knows what other targets they're going to have here for Vincent Kompany. So this board is all in on Vincent Kompany, which any board that's all in on their coach is probably going to succeed next year. There's just no doubt about it, especially when they have the revenue that Bayern Munich can use for this while still staying within FFP rules based off their last 2 seasons of transactions. But I do think Bayern Munich as a whole is a concern anyways, because there's a lot of defensive holes that need to be fixed here. And I think that starts at your number 6 position. I don't think having what has been a right back his entire career play as a 6, again, trying to be Philip Lahm, is a smart move. I think you keep the right back in the right back position that made him a world-class right back. Yes, he does have talents beyond that. That's not, who cares? He's the better right back. And right now, your right back position is questionable. You gave up 5 goals to Eintracht Frankfurt in a 5-1 defeat. You gave up 2 goals to VfL Bochum in a loss. You gave up, I don't know how many to Hoffenheim. I think 2 goals to Hoffenheim.
I mean, Kramer scored a hat trick off of them.
Yeah, and it all comes starting on what is the offensive left side and your right side in defense. You can't have that. If you have a hole, you fill it with your best available position instead of putting Joshua Kimmich at the number 6 position. That just ruins your entire defensive ability. And obviously some injuries played a part of Bayern's finish to the season. Sure, okay, whatever. You still have Harry Kane there. We all know what that guy can do with scoring. But if you're so busy playing defense that you can't get the ball to one of the best scoring strikers in our history, not named Robert Lewandowski, there's a problem. And you saw it there at the end of the season, the last 5 games, 3 losses, like not good enough if you're Bayern Munich. So I don't think Vincent Kompany solves all this problem, but I think the money they're going to put behind Vincent Kompany solves all the problems that I might have with this. So while I don't think it's a great hire, I do think Bayern Munich has a plan like they've had a plan for the last decade plus.
Yeah, I think a little bit, obviously, a lot different from the Xavi situation that he was when he was with Barcelona. But obviously, like you mentioned, Vincent Kompany's time as a player, well-respected player, a player that I'm sure a lot of guys playing in the leagues have respect for. Obviously, Leroy Sané, I'm sure a guy that has at least trained with him a few times while he was still in Man City, is very familiar with him. Obviously, the big concern for Bayern Munich is there's a lot of aging players now. You got to trim the fat out. You brought in Eric Dyer for some weird reason. I still can't figure out that transfer. But you're right. Joshua Kimmich needs to be back at right back. Alphonso Davies, he's rumored to be leaving, but apparently Vincent Kompany might be enough to keep him at Bayern Munich. As a matter, apparently. I know that the rumor is that they're going to spend 100 mil on getting Ronald Araujo from Barcelona, which basically take advantage of Barcelona's financial struggles right there, and get yourself a world-class center back to join forces with Matthias de Ligt, who I'm still waiting for him to finally be here in this league. Not only just in this league, but just be here in Europe. He hasn't been the same since he left Ajax. But I definitely want to see Matthias de Ligt definitely get some play time. That midfield, we need to start moving some guys around. I think one of the things that Tuchel really fucked up was that he wasn't playing Thomas Müller. And I know that you have Jamal Musiala. I know that. I think you have to find a way to play those two, because Thomas Müller is one of your best contributors on the ball. Musiala, I think, while he can play the cam very well, I think can even be more lethal on the wings. And I know I say that, and I'm basically saying we gotta figure out what's going on with Gnabry and Leroy Sané, but you kind of have to figure out what you're going to do with Leroy Sané and Gnabry, because those guys are getting up there in age as well. So I mean, it's about improving what you can improve. Like you said, go get a 6. And I think there's actually a lot of, Casemiro, I would probably be looking at trying to help out Manchester United out a bit too, over there. Yeah. But yeah, I think this is one of those times where Bayern Munich, like you said, has the money to go and get who they need. And I think the fact that there's players that have a lot of respect for Vincent Kompany and know that Vincent Kompany, who knows you better than a player? Yeah. A guy that's gone through it. So I think that there's a lot of respect for him, and I think there's going to be a lot of guys that play for him. But the thing is, though, if he's not performing, which we've seen Bayern Munich do plenty of times, obviously they prematurely fired Julian Nagelsmann, and I'm sure they definitely regret that move ever since. I'm sure they don't want to make that same mistake again, but Bayern Munich is that team that has no problem moving on from a coach if they're not performing.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned who better to know you than a coach that's played, not just a coach that's played, but a coach that's played recently. I mean, we're talking 4-5 years pre-COVID is since the last time he was on a pitch, and it was really recent. I mean, and he was a big part of the success again, and I cannot repeat that enough. He was a big part of the success Man City had in that turnaround when the money came in to keep them on balance, and not just them, but also Belgium and what their turnaround was in the world stage. He's a big part of it. He didn't play in their last 2 World Cups because of injury, and then obviously being out of the league, no longer playing. But you still look at that, and that alone tells you enough to be there. And it's funny you mentioned their midfield needing work. I honestly, when you said their midfield, until you said somebody, I was like, I cannot think of a single midfielder, because I'm thinking of Musiala as a left winger at this point in time in my mind, because outside of Joshua Kimmich, I'm lost for who's in their midfield, as far as who's in the midfield that's skilled enough to be in Bayern Munich's midfield. And I say that with the same weight I say Real Madrid's midfield. I'm not saying this I'm talking I'm Burnley and their midfield. I don't care. But for Bayern Munich, you need that link between back and front, and that's always been their success. When they got rid of Thiago and Liverpool took advantage of that, Jurgen Klopp took advantage of that seemed to be the start of a disconnect between their back line, their front line, and attacking through like they had been, and it turned into a wing attacking game for Bayern Munich. And now you see the downfall of what happens when you do that. And then a wing like Serge Gnabry and like Leroy Sané fall off in a season. You don't have the successes. And yes, Sadio Mane did not work out for them. That's safe to say. But you know what? You really didn't play a system that was good for him to begin with. So that's to be expected. And if Harry Kane can't get service, he's not going to work out again. And that's going to be looked bad. And fans for Bayern Munich, though, they do seem to trust the organization more than they trust the players, which kind of sucks for the players because the players get blamed at the end of the day and not like, hey, this was a bad move by you to choose a bad manager. So hopefully Kompany can take advantage of that, see what he has on the field, which I think he can. I think he's more than capable of doing so, and address that and make that work. And like you said, there's a lot of good players out there. You said Casemiro is just a stopgap right now. There's so many good older players as well. And, you know, there shouldn't be an issue getting Musiala and Mueller on the field together, because when you have a real six back there, those two can be on the field together. Mm-hmm. When you have Joshua Kimmich on the field, you then would have three ball-retaining midfielders who need the ball at their feet. It's no different than having 2 point guards on the court at the same time as for basketball. It's too many cooks in the kitchen. You just can't have that. It's not going to be successful. And yeah, that's, you know, figure that out. And I think you're good. So start with that sixth position and work your way around. Like you said, get a partner for De Ligt, or maybe just ship out De Ligt at this point in time and get two new center backs. That's always a possibility.
That's very true. And Bayern Munich is one of those teams that can't get away with that.
Yeah.
But Bayer Leverkusen is obviously going to be the team to watch in the Bundesliga to see how they respond to the year that they had, which obviously first undefeated team in Bundesliga history. Obviously they get their double.
Impressive.
On all those things, and we'll get to Bayer Leverkusen's Europa League match a little bit further down. But obviously all eyes are on them. But aside from that, maybe what happened Stuttgart, two things can happen. Either they're able to continue their form or they take a dip, which it seems to be the theme of Bundesliga. There's always that German team that steps up and then falls off. Union Berlin, great example. Qualified for Champions League last year. They were fighting for their lives to avoid relegation. Or did they get relegated? No, they did avoid relegation. So it's it happens. That's exactly what happens with this. Borussia Dortmund went from balling the Bundesliga last year to somehow making fifth place becoming a Champions League spot. So like, it's just things that happens with this league. And Bayern Munich, I think at the end of the day, is still Bayern Munich. I think they'll still be contending for the title. I'm not saying that a new streak could happen because I'm hoping that the Bundesliga becomes more competitive. But as long as Bayern Munich has their resources and has a good team philosophy, and Kompany can just keep the ship arise, I could see Bayern Munich bounce back and win the Bundesliga again.
Yeah, I could. And I don't think it's much. I don't think they need much. It's small things they need. Trust in a manager, a consistent system throughout the year, less injuries, and then starting to phase out these older players with newer players, younger players who are full of talent, which they can afford, which they can get from their own. I mean, they have enough guys out on loan. They could easily bring a couple of them back. I believe one of the Richards is still there and could easily fill a center back position in spots. I'm not saying a long-term situation right now, but easily in spots until you get a full solidified back line. There's a lot of ability in Bayern, and just getting the right coach with the right temperament, with the right management style for that team is going to be perfect for them. But don't sleep on somebody like RB Leipzig. You talked about teams that have just progressively picked up. They're one that have picked up over the last 5 years, and now they're in a position where 2 years in a row they finished behind Bayern, or in third place last year. This year in fourth place, right behind Bayern. Both years, 65 points this year, 71 last year, tied with Bayern, I believe, at that point. Like, huge years for RB Leipzig, but they're still also right there in that position, but they're also feeding into Bayern like what Dortmund was doing a few years ago. So there's a little concern there. And with that in mind, I mean, because of that, you probably have an ability for Bayern just to be like, you know what? We're going to go back to making the rest of the Bundesliga our feeder teams and taking all of your good players, which is what they did successfully for ever.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm just going to say this, man. If RB Leipzig if you can do anything, and I mean anything this offseason, find a way to keep Xavi Simons.
Yes.
Find a way to keep Xavi Simons, because if he goes back to PSG, which I mean, it's a weird. PSG is going to be a weird. It's going to be weird. I'm actually excited to see what PSG does, just because of like who becomes the new step up. Because everyone was expecting Gonzalo Ramos to have a big step up. He did not. Even the other player, what was the other French player that they signed to be basically Mbappe? Ekambi? It was a French
Openda?
striker. It was the guy that missed the penalty in the World Cup. Man,
Crap.
was it Ekambi? I could be wrong.
I think it
on that.
was.
Was it? Yeah, I think it was Ekambi. I believe because they brought him. I think they brought him over because I think he was with Frankfurt, either Frankfurt or some German team. But I know that he goes there. He was supposed to be the heir apparent to Mbappe when the second time around that Real Madrid was going to go after him. But yeah, they obviously didn't pan out. But maybe now that Mbappe is gone, they get more minutes, and maybe we can see what they really are capable of. But yeah, if Leipzig, if you can do anything, get Xavi Simons, keep him on your team, because especially if you somehow lose if you lose Dani Olmo to Bayern Munich, yeah, it's not gonna be easy. But then again, it's RB Leipzig. They always find somebody. So
Yeah. It's only a matter of time. That Red Bull money really pays off.
And I mean, now you got Leeds United onto your list of Red Bull teams. It's getting unreal.
Well, between them and the City organization, like, goodness.
Yeah, but the City organization, like, that's just straightly that's like purely unfair. Because I mean, I will say this though, because if the Red Bull group actually worked, Leipzig should have gotten Haaland when he was at Salzburg, and he didn't. So
shoulda, coulda, woulda. No, it's funny because they're under the difference is they're under contract at City, and they can just literally trade the players within themselves as how their contracts work.
Like just
Versus
like how
Red
Savio
Bull,
out of nowhere is going to be playing for Man City.
Yeah, where like Red Bull on the other hand, I believe it is Salzburg they're not allowed corporate sponsors or corporate ownership. So while technically speaking, the corporation does own them, they do it through a person, and that doesn't prevents them from using those type of contracts, which is really interesting and really weird, and leave it to European contracts to be that way.
Yeah, but all right, we'll see what happens with Bayern Munich this season with Vincent Kompany.